Hi there, this is Valeria Giannella speaking from Federal University of South Bahia in Brazil, and I'm here to present to you a summary of my contribution to this colloquium, which title is Building Up the World We Wish, the Role and Challenges of the Engaged Researcher in Building Social Transformation. The objective of the present work is to investigate the epistemological, theoretical, and methodological basis of the performance of what I call engaged researcher. I will resume the question that instigates these notes as follows. How the action of engaged researchers contributes with the movement of contrasting global injustice and how it can foster the emerging of futures alternatives to the global crisis we witness. All the presented arguments derive from self-reflection on my own practice, as well as on observation of the practice of many colleagues who share similar epistemological, theoretical, and political postures. All of these suggest that what is posed here is spoken from a specific point of view, which is that of an engaged university professor, being possible to verify its relevance for other types of engaged researcher. Now, let us clarify what I mean speaking about engaged researcher. First of all, it's important to state that this is not an abstract figure. I'm speaking here of women and men whose positions are marked and embodied by genders, choices, race, sociopolitical origin, and by all sorts of different biographies. I speak of researcher here, but this is not the kind of figure the classic conception of science represented as its hero for many centuries. The researcher I bring here to bear is a not neutral, not objective subject, compromised to the vision of a thriving society in just world, who acts in multiple and interconnected fronts as a facilitator, advisor, professor, shortly as a midwife of possible futures. The practice of this figure rarely fits into clear-cut categories. It's of a sower, a mobilizer of interactive processes, able to acknowledge and enhance collective knowledge, as well as to acknowledge the critical role that this knowledge could have in transforming the actual conditions of deprived contexts. In the full paper, I will highlight some recurring characteristics that we observe in practices characterized as extension research or co-research. Namely, I would like to focus the ambitions and challenges of these hybrid and transgressive practices, the work of deconstruction and reconstructions of references, premises, and postures to which these practices submit themselves. In the full text, the experiences of Brazilian practices as the common laboratories or the free school for social management will be used as inspiration on this point. Then, in an abductive way, I will explicit the epistemological, axiological, theoretical, and methodological framework that allow to account for this type of performance, seeking to clarify the existence distance between this declination of research practice and its more classic version. Not having here the time to summarize neither some aspects of these cases, I will just outline four abstract dimensions, being the first the epistemological dimension. Here I highlight the referential of South epistemologies jointly with other types of contra-hegemonic postures, all based on a radical critique to positivistic classic conception of science. On this base, I move to the acknowledgement of the critical role of the idea of place of speech in constructing knowledge and action. I highlight here as relevant examples the cases of the growing volume of peripheral, feminist, black, indigenous, decolonialist knowledge, all of them intertwined to the concrete organization of movements, activist communication, occupying of social networks, launching of free university, etc. We can state here that the complex world we inhabit just can be understood, interpreted, acted in if based on plural forms of describing it. Then I pass to the axiological dimension. I acknowledge here the role of values in the producing of knowledge and action for the world we wish. In contrast to the idea of neutrality and objectivity endorsed by the positivist science, as engaged researcher, we honor diversity and strive for inclusiveness and horizontality of our practices, to the aim of contributing to the construction and preservation of the common. Speaking about the third dimension, the theoretical dimension, I recognize the need of dismissing the classic assumption of superiority of theory over practice. As engaged researcher, we strive to avoid to impose our theory in the field. We better assume an abductive posture, hence embracing the task of listening to the context where we operate, striving not to impose our worldview and values, but to embrace and dialogue with what we encounter in the field, using our competencies to broaden the problem definition, to building up of sound, interactive, participatory processes, to the envisioning of alternative for problem solving. Finally, I will speak about the methodological field and point out specifically about methodologies which allow for participatory processes being as radical as possible. Here, I think that it is necessary to criticize the referential of communicative rationality as insufficient to bridge the gap between who historically, to bridge the gap between those who historically have a place of speech in public space and those who have not. How to revert this situation? The referential I work on since more than 1 decade is that of integrative methodologies. I really hope we'll have time to deepen this topic in our discussion, and just say here that in this framework we acknowledge the necessity to overcome the absolute reference to the dominant rationality in the public sphere, to open up spaces for the use of art, intuition, creativity as ways to face and lead to public issues, as a path being proposed in many interesting cases all around the world. Finally, I would highlight here concepts as perspectivism, active listening, dialogical stand, ecology of knowledge, and integrative methodologies as keywords that make those changes in references, premises, and attitudes that I mentioned above materialize. I finalize here, thanking you very much for your attention and looking forward to our discussion. Bye-bye.